Oh, my name is Jeremy. I'm getting ready to start a project. Well, I've already started it actually. This is an old boat I've had for many years. It's an 83 20 SS Baja. It's just a little 20-foot speedboat. It's got a 260 horse Mercruiser engine in it, a 350 Chevy. As you can see, I'm getting ready to pull the engine out of it. I've had this boat for a while. When I first got this boat, it was pretty much completely stock. Had a quadrajet, iron intake, iron exhaust. It was bone stock. It would run about 53 miles an hour. Turned in about 4,600 RPM. As you can see, the window frame, I'm going to redo. I'm going to refinish them. And you can see that it's not the original paint. It used to have a metal flake gel coat. It's actually a rattle cane paint job. Trying to paint it to match the interior. I did this paint job years ago and just never really finished it. As you can see, the purple pinstripe here. I need to finish it along this red stripe here too. Anyway, back to what I was saying. I have done quite a bit of work to it. Small stuff. These gauges. Has a removable steering wheel. Make getting in and out. I don't know if I can get it to work. There we go. Like that. New shifter. This small stuff. But I need it to go faster. Like I said, in the stock configuration, it was running about 53. It was about all I could get out of it. So I put, you can see the Edelbrock Torquer 2 intake. It's got a DUI HEI that replaced the factory electronic Mercruiser ignition. I don't know who made the factory ignition on it, but I had this DUI out of an old project, and I know it was a good distributor. And I put this, it's a 750 Carter carburetor. I had that on it. Those three modifications got the boat running up about 58 miles an hour. But it also got the RPM up about 5,300 RPM, which I didn't feel comfortable just sitting there buzzing it at that kind of RPM all the time. So the next thing I did was I changed the prop from a 3-blade stainless that it had to a 4-blade, more aggressive prop. The new prop made it a little sluggish out of the hole, but once it got up on plane, it ran all right, and it put the top speed of that boat up about 61, 62 miles an hour and brought the RPM back down to about 4,300, which that meant I had room to grow. There is the lower unit. Mechanically, it's fine. It just leaks oil out and leaks water in kind of deal. It needs to just be gone through. I do have a new one I am going to put on it. Keep that for a spare. Anyway, I've been collecting over the years some speed parts. So I'm going to yank this engine out, rebuild it, and tune it up a little bit. I'll take you in and show you what I've been collecting and some of the stuff I've been doing. This is my messy shop, sorry. A few years ago, I did some horse trading with a fellow, and I ended up with these set of used old Edelbrock Performer heads. They had good hardware in them. They had good valves. They had recently been gone through by somebody. As you can see, they had recorded the installed valve spring height on it. They had never really had any machine work done on them other than a lot of surfacing. They had been milled several times, and somebody had apparently run nitrous or got the thing really lean. You can see where it burned through between the two exhaust valves on the Siamese cylinders here. Had been re-welded and grounded. It just didn't do a very good job. You can see where it probably melted some pistons and some pieces of rings. got beat up in them. Now, they were running it this way. You know, they had fixed it, had run it this way, and I guess they finally gave up and decided to change heads. But the hardware in these heads were good. I took them apart, checked them, checked spring pressures. Everything was within spec for what I was wanting to do. So I decided, you know what, I'm going to buy a set of heads, bare castings, swap the parts from these to those. So I got on eBay and some other sites, and I noticed some head castings they had on there for a really cheap price. And that's what these are. These were $185 with the shipping included. And I researched them and looked at them. Looked at the other offerings by Dart and Brodix, what I really wanted. But it's just out of my budget for what I want to spend on this little project boat. And anyway, I looked at these heads and looked at the style, looked at the size, got some part numbers, figured out kind of what they are. These appear to be the exact same heads that a lot of these companies like Assault and Skip White Performance are using to build their economy, their budget performance head. Same specs. You look at the pictures that they have up on their sites to what these heads are, they look exactly the same. I am doing some hand work on them. I'm not really doing too much on the exhaust port side. Just going to clean up a little casting, sand flash. This is just going to be a 358 cubic inch engine, so I don't need a huge head. And these spec out at 200 cc. And the website or the eBay buyer I bought them from had them listed as a 68 cc chamber. There's also these same heads that look just like this that are listed with a 64 cc chamber. And they look exactly the same. I don't know what these are. I'm not going to CC them with the combination I'm running. I'm going to be running a forged 2618 flat top 2-valve relief piston. Wiseco brand. They are going to be a nitrous capable piston. And with the 64 cc head with the head gasket I'm running, they would be about 11 or 10 to 8.1. If they end up being 68 cc heads, they're going to be about 10.5 to 1 compression, which either of those will work with the octane, the 91 octane that I plan on running on this thing. I do have some issues with them that I do not like that I'm changing. As you can see here, I've scribed them out to a Felpro 1206 gasket. So I'm going to gasket match them. I have one head complete, I will show you. So that is some of the machine work I'm doing. They are listed as being capable of holding a 155 spring. I'm running 146 springs, but they have a spring seat that you have to use. The seats I have are an outside retaining seat instead of an inside retaining seat. And the seats aren't fitting in these recesses. I'm having to do, on 4 of the valves, I'm having to do some grinding right in here to open this up and radius this out so the seat will sit flush, or I should say the spring, the bottom spring retainer will fit flush in this seat. I'm having to do that on 4 of the valves. And another thing I'm not happy with, and I have an old plug in here that I'm got for demonstration, is with the plug all the way in. You can see they got the plug hole kind of high up in the chamber, and when they drill and tap it, there are several threads showing and some sharp edges. These sharp edges are no bueno. They just promote detonation. You can have heat spots. So I am grinding these unused threads out and radiusing them off, smoothing them out, make them less obtrusive. Now I'll show you the one head that I've already swapped out and got the valves lapped in and ready to go. Okay, I'll start over here at the exhaust side. On the exhaust side, I did not do any porting with a burr. I just used a coarse and medium cartridge roll sanded down as far as I could kind of reach, just to knock off the sanded or the casting edges. Not even getting real aggressive with that. And then I take a Scotch-Brite roll, or it's a little Scotch-Brite pad, and I smooth it up a little farther. You can polish these out to a mirror finish if you want. You can do that on the exhaust side. Does not hurt anything. On the intake side, you can see I did gasket match them, and they say to gasket match you need to go in at least an inch. I blended it in about the length of my finger here, as far as I could reach. I tried to open them up the most I could that I felt safe. I am not an expert porter. I tried to get the dimensions the same on all four, and get as close as I can with my eyeball. I did use some inside micrometers and kind of measure throughout and try to get them close, but they are by no means perfect. And on the chamber side, there you can see what I did with the spark plugs. I just ground out the threads that weren't being used and smoothed out the edges, rounded them off so there won't be any hot spots. Now what I'm topping these heads off with, oh, these are 202 160 valve heads. What I top these heads off with is some Urson Pro Stock branded stainless roller rockers. These are 1:6 ratio. I was kind of leery about buying them because I found them, they weren't on eBay. I just did a Google search and found a company that had these for sale for like $136. So for that price, they are Urson. Urson is an OEM supplier for decades. They make cams, lifters, valve train, rocker arms. They've been doing it for decades for the OEM. Did I say Urson? I meant Elgin Pro Stock rockers. Elgin, out of Elgin, Illinois. Anyway, after I got them and got to looking at them, I was a little worried that they were just the same Chinese knockoffs that you see all over eBay for less than $100. So I got to looking at pictures of the ones they sell, the packaging, the ones for $100. They come in this same brown box, the same packaging. But it wasn't until I started looking at the details of those versus these. Notice the roller bearing, the roller tip, the pin that holds it in. It's a machine steel pin that's pressed in. Got knurls. And if you look at the Chinese ones, you blow the picture up and you look at them, it's just a roll pin, a hollow roll pin that's slid in and then pressed here to dimple it to hold the roller in. And you'll notice the machine work, like, so you notice these have been polished. Those they're not. And the casting on them, there's a lot of slag and flash and rough edges. And you'll notice that the roller bearing doesn't seem to be the same, and also the push rod cup doesn't seem to be the quality that this is. So I think I got a good deal. These seem to be better quality than what those cheap Chinese ones offer. Even like the Assault Racing brand ones, they look pretty good. The Assault Racing brands have the same roll pins. They appear to have the same trunnion bearings. They're just not polished like these are. So I think for the money, oh, and I've looked recently, those are right around $146. So I got these for a better deal, and I think these are a better product. I did change out, the Edelbrock heads had 3/8 rocker studs. I changed them out with ARP 7/16 rocker studs to hold these, and I am using the stud girdle just because I had it and said, well, you know, why not? I got it, I'll use it. As far as the rotating assembly, like I said, I try to get cheap parts, new when I can. And I was at a speed shop in Kansas City and found this crank. Now, this isn't the box that came with the crank. It is an Eagle crank, but this isn't the part number here for this crank. This crank is actually a 348 stroke, not a 350 stroke. It's a 4340 crank, 348 stroke, and it's a lightweight crank. It's only a 48-pound crank is what I got. The reason it's in that box is because this crank was sitting on the shelf as a display. It was not boxed up. This was just a box they had laying around. I got that crank for less than 350 bucks. And it's a brand new crank. Couldn't pass it up. I was planning on turning this engine to a 383, but you know, for that kind of money, for an Eagle Forge crank, you know what, I'll just leave it a 350. To match the crank, I bought some Eagle rods. These are an I-beam or an FSI 6000 B2000. It's a 6-inch rod with ARP 2000 rod bolts. I got these on the internet off of Google from a company that I've never used before. Rolled the dice and gambled at they were a reputable business, and these were drop shipped from Eagle. They do have the ARP 2000 cap screws. These rods normally come with 8740 cap screws. The reason I wanted these and the reason I went with I-beam is for the price. I got these rods for less than $350, and they are set to support 900 horsepower with these rod bolts. That crankshaft there is only capable per Eagle of supporting 900 horsepower, so everything's kind of matched. Using, these are 60 over MLS gaskets. It'll be 40 thousandths thick. This is a camshaft I bought from the same speed shop. It is a Circle Track solid flat tappet cam. It's a 248, 244, 248 duration at 50. And it's a 510 lift, both intake and exhaust. And with those 1/6 roller ratio roller rockers, it'll bump them specs up a little bit, and it'll make the lift, instead of 510, it'll make the lift 544. These are some old parts I've had from various old projects I had, and I'm going to use them on this boat. I got a Melling oil pump pickup. I got an aluminum Stewart water pump. Some good bristol wires. And here's a Race Pumps fuel pump. Use this on a mud truck. Worked all right. The only problem I ever had with it is getting it primed. It does not suck with bone dry. You need to get fuel up to it or gravity feed it, and then it seems to do all right. And you see on the shelves, there's just some timing set. There's a SFI balancer that'll go on it. Head studs, a mini starter. A lot of this stuff's used parts I've had from other projects, and just been holding on to them for something. Figured that this boat is as good as something as anything. Trying to think of what else can I show you. Oh, the exhaust. You know, that factory exhaust is a cast iron exhaust. Pretty heavy, and I'm trying to lower the weight in this boat. I'm going with lightweight stuff, aluminum stuff where I can. That's why I wanted aluminum heads. I'm also going to change this intake to a taller single plane. I want this engine to have a power band that'll get up close to 7,500 RPM. So I'm going with a taller single plane intake to match the cam, and hopefully with close to 10.5 to 11-to-1 compression, it ought to make somewhere close to 500 horse, 475 to 500. You know, that's just a guess from what combinations I've picked out. These are the exhausts I've picked up off of Craigslist. These are not cast iron, these are aluminum. They're water-cooled aluminum. Inmar makes them. Normally, I guess these are pretty pricey. I scored them, I think, for 400 bucks. But here's how they are set up on this head. This is the other Edelbrock head that I need to steal the parts out of to build my other bear head. But I wanted to see how the header fit on the head, and pretty tight fit. It's going to be the one issue is adjusting those solid lifter camshaft, adjusting the rockers. I'm going to have to pull the exhaust off to get the valve cover off. to adjust it. But you know, on a boat, ain't like I'm going to be running at 10,000 miles a year. So it's probably something I'm only going to have to do once a year. And I'm going to run these stainless studs. So all I have to do is loosen the nuts, pull the exhaust off of the head a little bit, just so I can access the valve cover bolts. But well, that's the project so far. I'll make another video when I get a little farther along. Good day.